And we're live. Another edition of the Johnny and Gene Show. I'm Felix Levine. To my right, Gene Borrello, John Alite, and our guest today, Michael Nassif. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Before we get into it, we're going to just remind everyone who's watching or listening at home to subscribe to our Patreon channel. Again, that's where we post everything early. There's a lot of bonus content there that doesn't go up on the YouTube. We do bonus question and answers for John and Gene. You can ask anything you want, and they'll answer. We'll shout you out. So make sure you go check that out. The link is in the description of this video. And then also a big shout out to KCL Automotive. I'll let you talk about it, and I'll plug away the phone number at the end.
98 Henry Street. I keep saying 98th Street. I'm used to the club in Ozone Park. 98 Henry Street, East Stroudsburg, PA. We do full automotive work, inspections, tires, and body work. Buy here, pay here for people that don't have credit or used cars in general.
And you can, again, 98 Henry Street, East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. You can reach out to them at 570-534-8497. Go check it out. Today, Michael, you drove all the way from Cleveland, Ohio?
I did. I drove from Cleveland.
Well, we're happy to have you here. Thank you for making the trip down.
Good to be here.
I'll let you just quickly, for the people out there that aren't familiar with you and your story, just quickly a little bit about you and what you do, because you have a very interesting background that I think will jive well with these two.
Okay. Well, I just got out of jail. I spent 20 years in prison. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice, and I used to be a philosophy professor, and I was really interested in like theory of mind and the study of mind. And then when I went back to school and became a therapist, my first job, I was working with federal probationees. I did that for about 2 years. And I was really interested in how people change and how it was tough for people to get back into life, and how the system was kind of fucking them over every time they tried to make a change. And then it was almost like they were set up to go right back into it, and that was really sad, and it was kind of difficult to work with. And then and I started watching your guys' show, and I saw that you guys were covering so much of this on there, and John's experiences and Gene just coming out and stuff like that. And it's like it's all coming right here, like what I think is really important, not only with regard to being able to make a difference and change in society, but also like what motivates people and free will, and can you change? Or the environmental factors, the biological factors, like, are we born like this? Are we born violent? Are we born with criminal intentions, or does society make us like that? Does our environment make us like that? And where's that intersect? Where's that line? So I think you guys are like hitting on a lot of that in your shows, and that's why I kind of reached out to John, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. What you said is true, because in your environment, I think it is the environment, but it's in us already. If you have the disorder, the ADD, the ADHD, or the bipolar, or whatever, it's in us already, and the environment that we're in, Mafia environment, brought it out of us a lot worse than, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It showed how violent we were, and I can relate to that. It brought mine out.
Yeah, so that's something I wanted to ask you, Gene, because you've talked about having chemical imbalance.
My whole life. A lot. I had it my whole life. Yeah.
So if you imagine yourself growing up in a different environment where there's no violence and it's kind of nurturing and soft, do you feel like you'd be? What do you think you'd be like right now?
I think I would still not be able to sit still, because I don't. Yeah. I'd still probably talk to myself a little bit, because I do. But I think if I wasn't in that environment and and all the violence, I don't think I would have been as bad as I was. I really don't. When I got put in jail at 18 years old, I was a kid.
Yeah.
Rikers Island, it just made me worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've heard both of your stories a lot, and it seems like you get desensitized to it quickly when you're young. If you grow up and it's a tough environment, you're on the street, it's like you could be a really nice guy, but all of a sudden, you just start fighting and fighting.
Right.
Well, I think one of the most important things for you to be here is to analyze this guy, find out how he got hooked up with us.
That's really why I'm here. These guys called me and said, "You gotta."
So we need to really discover what's going on in his brain.
I'm actually here to intervene and get Felix back on the right track.
He started off as a really good kid, playing tennis, going to college.
Now you said you said you had it yourself, right? ADD.
I have ADHD. Yeah, pretty bad. And I did terrible in school, and I got in trouble. I didn't grow up in a street environment at all.
Right.
It was a soft environment, so I never crossed over into anything.
Right.
Little bits stuff here and there, like when you walk to that line. But
how'd you first commit your first murder then? Oh, they don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, we can't.
what was I going to tell you? Because when I was in school, I was bad. But like I said, I didn't cross over to that line till I was really in the neighborhood and I got older, and I started seeing the violence around me, and then it came out of me more. But I went to a doctor like yourself when I was younger, and they had told my mom that if he's not medicated his whole life, he literally said he'll be in and out of jail his whole life. And he was right. But I think when I was younger, they really didn't know too much about it. There were certain people that did, but not how they know today. But when I was younger, they were just kind of like really getting around to it. But they told my mother, he will be in jail. He will be in and out of jail. A jail will be a revolving door for him. And they were right.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think they used to make this mistake all the time. They don't make it as much anymore, but you still see it. And and this is where you get into like free will. But I think, it's like they blame it on the kid. Like that's what I got a lot. Like he just doesn't want to do it. Like he doesn't want to do what we tell him to do. And that really wasn't.
You just want to be careful just with the hands on the table.
Oh, sorry. That's right. You told me that before.
Just reminding you.
Well, you got ADHD.
Yeah, I know.
Listen, I'm like this.
I'm actually symptomatic
I can't sit still.
Gene and I are going to
I'm
have to
I'm
leave.
Want to switch seats?
Yeah.
I never sit still.
Imagine this feeling.
Right now, I just have to rock or something.
You're being complimented that you like me. Imagine. You're going to go home and tell your mother that one.
I actually forgot why I'm here.
So let me ask you a question. Okay, answer his.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's just, they feel the mistake is that they think you're doing it on purpose and you're being kind of compelled by something. And it's like something in your brain that is compelling you to do something. And that's where the interesting thing for me when I got into philosophy before being a therapist was like the idea of the mind, like free will. Like, can we make different choices? And when you're young, it's pretty clear, like you can't. So then you take, a situation where you guys are in the street, you've got stuff going on, Gene with the ADHD, it's like, there's no chance. Forget about it, because you're being, driven by these chemicals, this chemical imbalance, and
It's real.
yeah, it's really.
I wish people knew how real it is.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't know about the chemical imbalance because I don't have that. But I don't know I think you're aware of this, and I've spoken about it, that I've been in therapy over the years, about 30 years with Rosemary Stafford, we call her Mickey. And I think for the kids that are out there, or even the adults that are out there that are listening to this, and you can attest to this, it's like exercise. Nothing is overnight. And I've been in therapy for 30 years. It took me a long time to be working with her to be able to control my first thought process and the aggression. And I worked with two priests, actually, in 1994 for a while. And then in jail, actually, in MCC, there was a priest that would talk to me on a regular basis. And I think between the mixture, and especially Rosemary, Mickey, helping me through therapy, it helped. But it took time. You got to be persistent. It's like going to a chiropractor. You can't go once every 2 months. You got to be consistent, go and really work at something. And we worked at it for a long time. It got me to the position where people can't trigger me the way they used to.
That's something I wanted to ask you about, because that's so right. Is like, because people, when they go to see a therapist, they want like
fast fix in one day.
Exactly. Like you can't give a shot and you're like, okay, you clear up the infection or something like that. It could take like a lifetime.
If it even works.
Well, if it even works.
And we do shows with veterans and Brian Bay's show, and his show is I Got You Six, his podcast, and we talk about PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD. So these guys that we talk about, it's a constant process to work with you and people like you.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask about the PTSD. When did you get diagnosed with that, and what was like your therapist? Did your therapist say like, I think you have PTSD because of this, or did you figure that out, or how did that process?
I kind of figured it out myself, and then I started talking to, Mickey, who I knew for years, and she thought also, and then we went on a process of digging into it to see if really that's it, and it was, and I started seeing different people to get a true picture of what was going on, and I got diagnosed with it, and when I came home, this time around, about 9 years ago, I started to work towards addressing that, talking to in group settings with other guys with PTSD, mostly veterans that I would talk to, some law enforcement, people that have been through the violence that I guess I've been through. And as a child, I've been through a lot, I guess, as a kid. And, one of the biggest things that Mickey taught me over the 30-year span is to take responsibility for myself. Stop blaming your situation or your life or whatever happened in my life. Most people know that I've been talking about through these shows, and to stop making excuses and find a way to fix it, and which obviously we do.
That's the thing with anger is like, you have that emotional reaction and it's intense, right? But then it's like, what do I do with it? Because once you cross that line of the action,
I was going to tell you,
yours.
I think the worst mix is having an anger problem, ADD, ADHD, and bipolar all in one. Because that's what I basically have. So it's like I trigger this, trigger that, trigger this, and it's just like an explosion. It's horrible.
Yeah.
How
do you manage that now?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's real hard. And my whole life it was hard. I just flip out. In school, I used to do it too. I just couldn't control myself sometimes. And they don't understand. They think it's like, oh, it's not real. It's real.
Yeah. That's what, strikes me about you guys. And that's why I'm so interested in the show is like you guys, and Felix too, you guys seem like nice guys. You know what I mean? But I know that you did bad things and, had bad things happen to you. And I think it's fascinating that like, how does this happen? How do you get to that point? And now where do you go with it? Now that you have, you're a good guy and I did bad things, you reconcile that, there's the PTSD, and then like, how do I live my life now? And that's where I think, this is fast, where you guys are headed with this is really great.
Well, I think when we're on the street, right, and you're violent because of the life we're living, you actually, when you get especially as a young guy, when you get ordered to do something, I think that's a release mechanism, right? That was my release mechanism.
Right.
Yeah.
If somebody asked me, kill this guy or shoot that guy or hurt that guy, I kind of use it as my own way of self-medicating my problem, right, without medication. So that was the release, and you're good again. Now, as crazy as that may sound, right, to people that don't understand that, as you work through it, psychologically, and you deal with people like yourself that are helping us, you're learning to use other methods of dealing with the same problems you have. They don't go away.
Yeah.
You just don't get triggered the way you used to because you're working at it. And, it's a daily exercise like anything else.
Right.
And then I tried the meds and it had me like this. I says, no, I'm not taking this.
Yeah.
No way.
So you don't take anything now?
Nothing. I wouldn't do it because they tried to put me on it. And then I did it for like a month and I was like falling asleep wherever I would sit. I'm like, no, I'm not taking this.
What are your thoughts on medication, generally speaking? Do you find that it works or?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on what it is. Like what the, I'm a therapist. I don't prescribe, but I, talk to people about, hey, go see this guy, and maybe. I think it's like it should be kind of a last ditch thing. Like if everything else that you've tried doesn't work, and it speaks to like the level of maybe the chemical imbalance that you might have or the severity of your mental illness.
Well, I think, and you'll know, obviously you're the expert, but I think the biggest thing that I try to relate to kids, or we're talking to young adults or anybody, is the impulse. Control that first impulse.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And once you get that first impulse under control, you're okay.
It's liberating.
Right.
Yeah.
And you control yourself. Honestly, it feels great to be able to not fly off the handle like you did before, because before, that first impulse was whatever, whether it was put a knife through somebody's head, shoot them, whether it was business or personal, and you learn to control that impulse and do something different. Yeah, there's something different, maybe call Felix, somebody who's normal, and he's going to say, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what's wrong?
Are you normal?
And he's a young guy, but that's, not too normal.
He's normal.
But you call somebody like yourself, or you have your thing, and but you got to structure your life a little bit. And I think that's part of the structure, and I think part of working with the guys we work with that've been in prisons or from the street.
Right.
And, we try to help. The biggest thing is what you said earlier, to me, is besides some of the psychological stuff that goes on with us, it's the setup of the system that doesn't give these kids in the inner cities the chance to at an opportunity at life, especially if you have a mistake at the beginning of your life.
Yeah.
They don't let them. It's set up for failure. And this is what I'm trying to advocate for in the system.
Yeah.
Stop, setting these kids up to go back to prison.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question just real quick. Now, I believe, I could be wrong, but I think you would know. How much % of these kids that commit violent crimes have our disorder? I bet it's high.
I think it's extremely high.
I think it's most. Yeah. I really believe that most of these guys that commit these violent crimes like we were doing, I think 80% of them probably have disorders like this.
There's definitely other things going on, but I think it's very prevalent. And it definitely is like there's a much higher chance of any type of, there was a study done a long time ago where they give a 4-year-old kids, I think it's done in the 60s, I can't remember what it's called right now, but they give them a cookie, or they give them the opportunity to get like one cookie now, or if they wait, they can get 2 cookies. And the kids that could wait and not impulsively grab that cookie, they followed them throughout their lives, and they had instances of more success in their careers, less interactions with the law, happier personal lives, and that's, you're 4, so you hadn't really learned that much. It was like just innate in them. And that was like all about just, looking at impulse control. So I think when you don't have that impulse control, you're already like, behind the 8 ball in terms of, and then you factor in all these other things, and it's like, yeah, for sure.
What do you think is the biggest contributor to someone who would go into a life of crime? Like we did a segment a while back, I don't know if you remember, and John was talking about how your zip code really determines a lot in your life.
Yeah.
Do you think that or in your noticings of people you've dealt with that have been criminals, where you grew up is the most influential factor, or are there more that are more influential than that?
Yeah, no, I think John's right. It's the zip code for sure. It's like when you don't have interventions in your school, you don't have the teachers able to handle, kids that are, doing bad things and stuff like that. And, there's not opportunities, there's not jobs, there's things like that. And it's like, what else are you going to do? And then there's opportunities to make money on the street, like right in front of you, where you could, you see your older brother or you see a friend and they say, come on, just stand on the corner and you make some money and stuff like that. That's what I saw with some of these guys. I remember a guy came out, it's one of my first people that I saw, and I only did the Fed stuff for like a year and a half, 2 years. But I saw, quite a few guys at that time. And one guy was 32 years old, and he went in at like 17 for like, it was like a big drug bust,
Right.
Kind of thing where I can't remember the details of it, but it was like it was like his first, he was just implicated in this big drug ring or something like that. And he got out, and he was the nicest guy I ever met. Like, he was a real sweet kid. And I was just like thinking, like, he was making all this money as a 17-year-old. He could not find a job anywhere, like not even at McDonald's. I remember him talking. He's like, nobody will hire me to do anything. I'm just trying to get like maybe, soliciting yard work and stuff like that. And I'm like, what the fuck is this kid gonna do? Like, he's the nicest kid, but I know that, there's going to be opportunities for him to go right back into that. I don't know what happened to him, but it's that kind of thing that I think is really that systemic problem that, John talks about a lot, which I think is really, really important and needs to be addressed. That's why I think this is important.
What do you tell those kids that are high at risk to go back?
It's hard to say it's going to be okay. And it's really hard when you're in a position where you're not in that situation to act like because I don't know what that feels like. You know what I mean? I know what it feels like to have ADHD. I know what it feels like to fuck up, but not at that level and to not have.
But Michael, here's the important thing, and I've said it to you off the air before camera. If me and you are working together with that kid, then you can
the combination,
relate. The combination, because I can relate to what they're saying. And then you talk to us on a psychological level, but together we can help these kids. And that's why I said this has got to be a group thing. I'm not happy with the politics of the government, the way they're set up to make a lot of these kids fail. And the thing is twofold with kids, right? We don't want them to use it as an excuse, because I didn't want to use it as an excuse.
Right.
And for a time period in my life, I did use it as an excuse, and I'm never going to move forward if you do. And then I learned through people like yourself to help me not use it as an excuse and then move on. But it's very hard to tell a kid, you're only worth pumping gas, because I did that, right? You're only worth cutting the lawn for a landscape. I did that. Or telling somebody you're only okay to drive a car and drive somebody around, because I did that. And these kids are saying, well, I'm making $5,000, $3,000, $2,000 a week, just standing on a corner flinging a couple of bags or something, or not standing on a corner, just ordering other guys to do it. Now you're asking me to do this for a living. But the problem those kids aren't seeing is the bigger picture.
Right.
That's going to be short-lived. You're going to take 2 steps back eventually and go to prison or get killed or something. And we need you to move forward in a direction where you're going to make a couple bucks and at the same time keep your dignity and pride.
Right.
And, so that's a combination that you got to work with me and guys like me and him, and where, these guys feel they're successful, dignity, and they got to like learn to like themselves, right? Which I always used to say I didn't like myself.
Right. And that's like, you ask like, what do you say? A lot of it is just being a real person and empathizing with them and like trying to understand and then like finding their strengths. Because everybody's got, strengths that are outside of, what they were doing before with the criminal activity. So if a kid's got ADHD, there's a lot of positive things that go along with that. Gene, you probably know that, like you got a lot of energy, you can do a lot of different things, you know, a lot of ideas and like, finding that.
Except like 20 of them at once.
Right, but there's a charisma.
I'm all over the place.
Now, how does, so in a case like Gene, right, who at least the first time that you tried the medications, it didn't work, right?
They did that scan, they put the things on me. They checked
did they do like an fMRI?
They said I had the worst case.
Wow.
That it was extremely high. The doctor, I swear to God, I'm not just. They said it was one of the worst case.
We got to
I
compare.
could have diagnosed you. Some guy's
But
not.
Save a lot of money.
How does someone, if you, I mean, obviously, I don't know if this is exactly your domain, but what do you do to help his quality of life now if the medication, or at least the medication that you tried that time, didn't work? If it's no medication and just
No, it would have worked, but I didn't like the way it made me feel.
But were there other benefits of it?
I mean, you're a zombie. So it'll work, it'll calm you down, but you're a walking. I could be an extra in Walking Dead. I'm like, look.
But he's not able to diagnose him on one visit. He needs to talk to him a little bit and see where he can work without medication, with medication. I mean, it's going to.
You try different
people got to be patient.
Yeah. So you go see like a psychiatrist or even your family doctor. They'll give you medication, and then you come back, and then we talk about it in therapy. Like, how's that working for you? What's going on? What do you notice? A lot of times, people around you notice changes more than you notice them yourselves, and then you start to incorporate that. Like, notice people are reacting to you differently, and you point things out.
Yeah.
And that's where like the impulse stuff comes in.
But
like
it also, like my disorder, like when I'm high up, like I feel great, and then when it goes down, I'm like so depressed. It's like people understand every 15, 20 minutes I go through it. I'm up, I'm down, it's crazy.
And that's the bipolar.
Yeah. It's horrible. All these
You
disorders.
must be good at what you do, though. No bullshit. Because I've been in therapy my whole life, and you're very soothing the way you talk, your reaction, your mannerism. I mean that. I mean, there's people that you'll go sit initially that I've seen before Mickey, and then when I was in other countries, when I tried to, and right off the bat, no, I can't. It's not going to work.
It is a personal
it's
effect
personal.
thing, and I'm good that because I'm being held against my will right now, so it's interesting. That's not coming off on the camera.
You mean that gun that we got under the table?
Yeah,
You're going to sit here and do this shit.
But I complimented you.
I'm trying to signal the camera.
What's the code? Look, Eagle 1.
No, thanks, John.
Well, I have a lot of people now that contact me all over about the disorder too. They know I have it, and they say, they talk to me about it. I says, and I explain to them theirs, and everyone has the same symptoms. Like some people have it worse than others, which I have really bad, and some people that have it really bad like me, they say I know what you're talking about because they know. Other people be like, oh, that's fake. It's not fake.
And that's why I love that you guys are doing this, because you're both really honest about everything. Different things. You have different things going on, but it's like
I'm a little too outspoken and too honest, but they tell me,
Yeah, but it's helpful, man.
Yeah.
You're helping. You're both helping kids in different ways.
If you watch when we cut the tape,
Yeah.
a lot of times we got him duct tape with his mouth shut, we calm him down. So we take that, we put it out.
It's just a cardboard cutout of Gene for a couple of shots.
What is it that you notice also? I mean now you spent 45 minutes with these two, and even I've spent so much time with you guys.
Did we rub off on you at all? Do you talk like this now?
I don't. But
You're wearing a mock neck.
He's in college going, listen, if you don't have my books back, I'm going to break your kneecaps.
He called me up this morning. He says, are you wearing the dark one or the light colored mock neck?
I almost wore the dark
Go,
one.
Felix, what do you mean? I borrowed 2 textbooks. Make sure you got my books back tomorrow.
Do you feel like there's do you often notice that either in past criminals or current criminals that there's a very easy switch on and off between like being a nice guy like to you and me, and where does that switch happen?
That's a really good question, and it's something I'm really interested in. And I noticed that when I worked with certain guys, there were certain times where I felt like, this guy's really nice, but man, if I fucking push this guy, I know he can be violent really quick. You can feel it in somebody. And it's there. And there's also people, because I'm interested in like psychopathy, like people who are like actual psychopaths. And I saw this in white collar guys where it's just like, you just don't feel like there's a person in the room with you, or they don't see you as a person. They don't recognize your humanity. And And that doesn't necessarily even have to do with violence. You could be a white collar, like embezzlement guy. And
Well, there's a lot of those business guys do it. They got no problem robbing every single penny and
Right.
shaking you down,
Oh,
taking
my
your
God.
socks off you.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, there's a quality about them that's really fucked up.
Yeah.
That they don't care. They got they don't care what they're doing to your family. They destroy you completely.
Right.
With no mercy.
Right. And there's when violence is involved, like the stuff you guys did, there's more of to me, there's always seems like there's more of an honesty to it. Like, hey, this is what I do. If you borrow money from me, this is what's going to happen, kind of thing. Whereas if somebody's saying, hey, I'll invest your money, and they're lying to you, and it's a Ponzi scheme or something like that, that's scarier to me than actual violence in terms of, because it's so.
You're right, because we're coming at you. You know what's going to happen. They're basically, have other plans for you. They know they're scamming you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of freaked me out more when I was working with those guys, because I'm like, man, something just feels really off, and you just kind of feel it.
Yeah.
It's not even like something you intellectualize, and you just feel it.
Would you say that every person who either is capable or has committed like mass murders or whatever it is has to be a psychopath, or they had to have had psychopathic?
Don't look at me.
I'm not thinking. No, but like, in those moments, would you consider psychopathic episodes? Or no?
I don't know the answer to
You have
that.
no chemical imbalance?
No.
But
And you shot all those people?
well, that's what I found so fascinating about John is his stories. But when you watch him, he's a nice human being. It's like what appears to me, and what I've learned, a sensitive human being. And so then the question is, how does somebody get to that point where they do that? And I've met guys where I felt like there's not, like both of you guys seem like nice people, and there are guys that aren't like that. But yeah, how do you get to that point when you're a person that does have empathy?
Because you live by certain structural rules that I believe in, even if they're wrong rules.
Yeah.
And that's what Mickey was teaching me as we went through, things like there's rules that most people in society behave like. And we were talking about kids like some, kids that you see in the street. They're really nice kids.
Right.
And people get intimidated by the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they dress. And, I have a different outlook of those kids, right, than another person.
Right.
So I think it's just an adjustment of what we believe is okay in our rule book. I mean, am I wrong? Or
no, because it's like you use the soldier, the war analogy. Like when you sign up to go to war, it's like, obviously soldiers aren't psychopaths, right? There's a context for it. Right. It's like, I'm here to go do a job. There's a societal endorsement, but you're still killing people. You still, and you see their faces when they die sometimes not. But in the context of being in a gang or being in organized crime, it's like, this is what I'm here to do. It's my job. There's rules.
It's a real job.
Yeah.
It's crazy. People laugh, but it's a real job.
Yeah.
And the case, I mean, the thing that I feel like people don't think about sometimes is that in your guys' life, it's kill or be killed. You know what I mean? And people are coming after you, and it's not just,
and again, I got to refer to you because you're the expert, but I think long term, that's why you see a lot of police officers kill themselves. They're on the street, and people really never understand. I think that when you put that uniform on and you're risking your life every day, and we're seeing it more now because of everything that's going on. Somebody just drives by and they just shot another guy in the face. I forget where that was. Was it New Orleans? I'm not sure. But the problem is long term, like people in the Army and the Marines and the Air Force, and they have a lot of PTSD because they're living long amounts of time of stress, under extreme stress. Even if that duress, you don't realize it yourself and you have it blocked out, eventually it's going to come out, right?
Yeah.
And I think we live that life where what you're saying is kill or be killed, because whether we like the idea or not, say, I don't worry about that. But somewhere psychologically in the back of your mind, you must worry about it because it's a survival instinct the way we behave. We don't just randomly go anywhere. You're always worried about your dog gonna get kicked in and you're gonna get locked up for life, or you're gonna face the death penalty. So this somewhere's got to take a toll psychologically on us. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Of course. And think about the mob. Most of the time, guys like us getting shot, they're coming like this with a smile.
Yeah, maybe a friend.
Your friend, they're your closest person to you, shooting in the head.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to ask you guys, like the stress of living like that, knowing that like somebody could be coming after you, or knowing
I beefed with everybody. So I fought I mean I know he did too, but I fought with a lot of guys. I always was looking over my shoulder. So
I mean, I can't imagine what that would
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like to wake up knowing like today could be the day.
I told a newsman he wanted to interview me. This is a couple of years back, and very prominent writer. I won't bring up his name, but so he made a location that was very, secure and back, and it was crazy what he did. And he said to me, "Well, no one's going to do nothing to you anyway." Blah blah blah. And he's given his reasons. And afterwards, I left. I says, "Well, when we go out the door, you go first, and here's my keys to my car. You go start it." And really, 99% true. He's right, 99% of the time. But go live that 1%, because the everyday normal human being goes to the home, relaxes, and he puts his key in his front door.
Right.
And he's not jumping at a noise over his shoulder,
No.
because that's how mob guys hit each other.
Well, when you parked your car, how many times you circled the block before
Yeah.
you parked? I had
So,
to look at every angle.
Of course it's going to take effect. And
Yeah.
today, when you see some of these guys, we had a guy, Ray, on that was an ex guy on the street, and we had Andy on that goes into the prisons, a Christian guy that goes into prisons now, and he tries to talk to and reform young guys or kids that are in jails or juvenile centers with a group of ex-gang members and gangbangers that understand the life. And we all understand that every time you go on the street, even though you changed, we don't know what happened in our past and how many people still didn't change that wants to take your life.
Right.
So you're dealing with that every day, whether you realize it or not, somewhere psychologically in your mind. You might say it doesn't take effect, but it has to.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and sometimes like just subconsciously that builds up. It's stress and anxiety, and you don't even realize it's happening.
Well, the biggest thing is, and I don't know, most street guys, I think, is when I feel there's a confrontation with me, I like to be aggressive. Now I'm not aggressive. There's the difference.
Okay.
And, when people say in anything, in a sport, anything, aggressiveness in sports is also a good thing, right? The more aggressive you are and intelligent with your aggressiveness makes you successful. But when you're not aggressive and you're laying back and you're waiting to be attacked, that's not a good position to be in.
It's vulnerable.
It's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it's got to take effect, because I'm used to being so aggressive. When I hear anybody do anything, say anything, or make a move that I think is towards me, I do what I used to do. I don't do that now. So I had to learn to deal with that.
How do you manage that now? Because there's got to be an instinct to do it, right?
Well, that's why, when we talk, I think the instinct is first of group settings, right? Because I talk to a lot of serious violent guys that people don't particularly know, that don't go on the air with me. Guys that were involved in my whole life. Some of them ex-armed service guys that are very good friends of mine, that were serious guys, that were snipers and guys that really seen a lot of action. So these guys were Navy SEALs. I just spoke with somebody recently that tremendous, been through so many ops. So I have these conversations with these guys, and then talking to you and people in a group setting with somebody with experience like you that are managing us while we're talking. I think that stuff, and exercise, and you got to learn ways to train your mind away from the PTSD and some of the weaknesses you have from it.
Makes sense. Yeah, and the outlets seem to be really important, huh? Like having somewhere to put that.
Well, you said it when you first sat in here. I don't know if we were on the air or off the air, and you said, "I don't know how I could tell a kid." Yeah, we said it on the air, but in conjunction, I said, "Yes, we can."
Yeah.
Because if we work together to help that person,
right.
I do know that feeling, and I think the biggest thing that I'm trying to accomplish on the show with Gene and Felix is, in my own personal, what I'm trying to accomplish is, I don't care about the politics, right or left. I care about how do I save kids that grew up like us. And to do that, we need to change some of the systematic things that are wrong with the system. I says, and that some of it's the sentencing, some of it's the treatment of a human being in jails for some of the crimes they committed. There's been some push recently with change of reform, but there needs to be a lot more. And the other thing is a belief by the public that things have changed, and we're giving second chances to people out in the street. I said it last time on the show, and I think it's better now that you're here. And we talked about this in the hall. I'm almost at this for 10 years. I'm a famous guy that's been on 30-something magazines. I've been on TV, I've been in movies, I've been everywhere. There is not one major company that believes what I'm saying because they haven't came over and ever offered me an endorsement. Because they're saying he's an ex-criminal, he's an ex-gangster.
Right.
He don't deserve
Real.
it, is what they're saying. Because if they weren't saying that, I'm probably more popular than most athletes and movie stars. So why isn't anybody giving me those same endorsements they give an athlete? Because of the work we're doing with kids and young youth, and we're advocating, and we're doing talks at colleges, at schools, at juvenile centers, and one-on-ones and group settings, because that belief is just a political statement with any action behind it. And I keep trying to get action for these kids. So if it's not happening for me, how is a no-name young kid going to get it, of color, of minority, or whatever? So when I'm talking about these young kids, and I'm going to talk because of racism constantly in this country, and that's what everybody talks about. There's racism in so many different ways, but the prejudgment of our neighborhoods that we don't deserve better, we started to believe it ourselves.
Right.
And I'm trying to change that thought process of those kids, because I'm still trying to change it in myself, because I don't believe either, still, till today, because no one's coming forward. So it's actions, right? When somebody shows by actions, we can believe it.
That's a deep thing, because as far as you've come, there's still that reinforcement of that stigmatization, and you internalize that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that, you would think at this point.
Right.
I'm not just known in the United States. I'm known in every country, actually. They invite me to do talks all over. I'm on TV everywhere. I've done shows everywhere. I'm all over the world. I've been in 45 countries by now. So why hasn't any major corporation or company said, listen, let's show that we're not just talking? Just like the politicians that on all sides manipulate, and they all make tons of money, and Pelosi or name or whatever, one of them, they're making tons of money. They're getting double pensions. They're getting raises. Meanwhile, they're taking their money every week. They don't give a second stimulus package, all of them. It doesn't matter who. And they're not worried about the average person that's losing their businesses and their jobs and their money, but they're making sure they get their pay.
Right.
So why isn't everybody helping these communities more? Right. And the average person, they can talk that game, all this politics, they fight with each other, but at the end of the day, if you check all their bank accounts, when they entered government and when they leave, they all become filthy rich. Maybe there's a couple that are slipping through, they're not, but most of them are about themselves, not about our communities and our kids. And there's the problem. When you get a guy like Leo Terrell, I don't know if you know who he is, and he's an activist, and I love the guy, and he's genuinely for the neighborhoods. That's what he wants, right? He's concerned about advocating for kids. So when you talk about, the show is and is about you and the psychology of how do we help these kids when systematically it's a fucked up system, because they're not really letting these kids do anything but telling all of us, oh, just go work at McDonald's. It's fine to work at McDonald's for structure initially, but we want to know that we can get up from out of that. And then make something of ourselves.
Sometimes you can't even get in McDonald's, because I wanted to ask you something also. You touched on something that made a lot of sense. You said that a lot of the guys that you dealt with in the street, they couldn't get no jobs nowhere, right?
Yeah.
I believe that they should have it where if you're a convicted felon of a sex crime and things like that, I understand that's going to be really hard for you to get a job. But for someone that sells drugs or maybe an assault case or something not too serious, I don't think they should even be checking that. Like, I can see if you have a sex offense case or even a murder, I understand. But if you have a burglary or you on drugs or something minor, how is that going to prevent you from getting a job?
Yeah, right.
That's just not even right, because I've seen so many guys get convicted of crap.
Right.
Like bull crap, because they have no money, no lawyer, no nothing. They'll get crazy time for nothing, something stupid, and they can't get a job nowhere.
Or just carrying like a certain amount of drugs.
Or a knife that's past 4 fingers, you'll get a felony. It's just, some of the charges are so ridiculous. It's just, I've seen such ridiculous stuff. I believe that if you have a felony and it's not that serious, it should be washed off in 5 years, no matter what.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for reform in that regard. And I think, what's important is the societal stigmatization. Like, you meet people who have felonies and they're real people, they're good people. Not all, of course. A lot of people are bad, but there's a lot of good people that have been through the system. And I think that's, again, what I like so much about what you guys are doing with the show is that it's like, we got to pay attention to, what's going on.
Well, most people are afraid of what they don't know, right? So society doesn't know jail. right? Now, this is a crazy thing I'm going to say. You could put me like in Brazil penitentiary, right? Because it's one of the worst crazy jails there is. It isn't so bad because of the inmates, even though there's a lot of violence. But they breed the violence, the system does. So now it could take me into the United States and put me in a penitentiary in the United States. And honestly, 90% of those inmates are pretty decent guys. And I know we're all A-type males and all that. But they're decent guys. If you take one out at a time and talk to them, I guarantee you, most of them will be reformed if you handle them the right way.
Right.
And everybody has the belief in public, oh, throw the key away, ruin them, keep them, like, because they're scared of it. It was kind of like I told you that story about the kids. I seen 10, 12 kids in the restaurant. They're afraid of them because they dress the way my son dressed, or the way he's dressing right now, with a hoodie on, with glasses, the pants, whatever way they wear them. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with, they're judging that person by their clothes. And the kids don't understand, they don't hate them. They're just afraid of them, because it's something different than they're used to. Yeah. But I come from that world, so I know, that once you start talking to them, they're pretty good kids, most of them. It's just like the jail. And to say that, and people go, oh, this guy's full of shit because he's a criminal, they were in jail. It's true, though. If you interview them, most of them are intelligent, just what you said. Everybody has a talent somewhere. If you bring out those talents, because in jail, it's amazing how smart most guys are. And what they've done and accomplished. I'm not that guy. I'm not handy. But I guess there's a different quality. But each guy has a quality, and if you give them that other chance, and of course there's guys that are just truly angry, and maybe they can never be fixed. Who knows why they're truly angry. But most of these guys really are decent human beings. They just did stupid shit, just like I did a ton of stupid shit. And I got a second chance. And I always say I'm a poster child for everybody else, that if I can do it, they can do it. They just need somebody like you to work with them, to help them get there, and you to deal with these, bureaucracy of politicians that really don't understand. They're talking about inner city kids when they're clueless about it because they're not from there. How can Pelosi possibly know about East New York, Brooklyn, when you live rich and you live that way? You're clueless. You just don't even know. You're reading off a pamphlet somewhere. And she's not the only one. They got to understand us.
They're reading a book, How to Be Cool. Right.
We're just going to take a very quick break to talk about our sponsor of the show, Manscaped. Support for the Johnny and Gene show comes from Manscaped. Autumn is in the air, and Manscaped is here to ensure that you don't carve your pumpkins when you're grooming. By pumpkins, we actually mean your boys downstairs. In fact, Manscaped is on a mission to change the way you approach caring for everything down below. And great news, they just released their products in the UK, Canada, and Australia. The Lawnmower 3.0 is the best trimmer on the planet and offers a replaceable ceramic blade with advanced skin-safe technology, which helps reduce grooming accidents. They also have their new Weed Whacker, which is an ear and nose hair trimmer, which also uses that same skin-safe technology when you are trimming those delicate nose hairs of yours. Also, go to manscaped.com and you can check out their new Refined Cologne, which is a cost-effective way to smell clean and fresh for your date. When you use the promo code JG at manscaped.com, you'll receive 20% off and free shipping. Go to manscaped.com today. Use that promo code JG for the Johnny and Gene Show. You'll get 20% off, free shipping. Go check it out today. Michael.
Yes.
Man, there's so many different questions. I think one that I think is interesting is for you. If you're dealing, what's the process of dealing with someone who say just gets out of jail, and I guess you're trying to get them to integrate back into society, knowing that society is pretty much structured against them. Jobs, socially, it's difficult. How do you guide, or for that person out there that might be listening to this, even if it's not something you've exactly done step by step, what are some of the ways in which you feel like are good first steps for that person out there who's lost on how to go about reintegrating back into society like a normal person?
Yeah, well, there are programs, and it depends where you are and what's available to you in terms of that kind of stuff. And I didn't do any of that, like practical stuff. When I worked in that field, I would deal with just the person's feelings and their emotions and things like that. But I think the first thing, from a therapy standpoint, is really like helping somebody or facilitating a situation where somebody can feel like somebody cares. Like it's not just me against the world. So that's, I think that's the first step of just like trusting somebody, because a lot of people don't trust anybody when they're in a situation like that, and for good reason. And then again, I think, it goes back to finding somebody's humanity and their strengths. And it's like when you're seen as a person and not just like a felon or a number or a menace to society, but just as a human being, I think then it can start opening pathways. And then it's like once you find those, the person starts to feel a little bit better about themselves, and then they start looking at their strengths and like, how can I apply this? And then, it's like finding the programs that can help get them reintegrated into society. But I think first and foremost, the person has to feel like they can do it. They got to feel confident. And like, John was talking about like being stigmatized, like, and then Gene talked about like the laws. Like, if we could change some of that stuff to where it's like a felon isn't like, totally like a pariah and people are terrified of felons, I think that would go a long way. But I think the first step is, learning, a person learning about themselves. And that can vary based on the person. So if a person's got like impulse control issues, like learning how to control those. If a person's got, depression, or if they've got anxiety, some guys, sometimes criminal behavior is like a way to soothe anxiety. Like just if somebody's really anxious, like I got to go do something, and there's nothing else for me to do. There's nothing I can control in the world, but I'm good at this, so I can control this. So
do you also feel like the reason that a lot of perhaps criminals or people that are at risk don't seek therapy or seek professional help is also ego-based, and feeling like it would be a sign of weakness to talk to someone like you?
I think that's a really good question, not just for people who've engaged the criminal justice system, but
anyone.
for all of us.
Yeah.
It's like there's such a stigmatization.
Yeah.
And I think your generation is, our generation, no, I'm just kidding, your generation, is getting better at
Is
that.
better at it.
Way
I
better.
agree.
But yeah, it's like, it's just like you're just talking to somebody, and somebody's actually there to listen, and, somebody that's supposed to care about you. And
Oh, there's a big stigma with talking.
I imagine like,
In my mom's generation, it was incredible. You wouldn't even go.
Yeah.
And then my generation at the beginning, but I'm pretty out there the way I talk. So I let everybody, because I want people not to feel that they can't get help. So I kind of open all the windows and doors to my house for people to look in the way I talk. So, but I think that stigma, there is a stigma to it.
But I think it's also especially for John, and that's one of the things actually when I first met you that I was impressed and honestly surprised about was, I think it's a real sign of desire to change and true strength for someone like you to be able to say, yeah, I go to therapy, or I even seek therapy, or I did therapy for this amount of time, because, you're a high level person in the Mafia. Of course, the ego is, at levels that probably normal people aren't. But to actually say, you know what, I know this is going to be good for me, I think helps show a lot of kids out there and a lot of people out there in general that, if someone like you is going to go to therapy, why can't they? Even if it's different problems. And I think even what you were saying about generationally speaking, like even in the last 10, 15 years, I know that, people, my friends really never went to therapy, and now I'd say 75% of them do, including myself. I was one of those people who's like, no, therapy is for the weirdos.
You started therapy, you have to deal with
have to deal with
You said therapy's for the weirdos?
No, but I think that was kind of like the mentality that if you went to therapy, you had
no, you're
issues.
and I think you're crazy.
Right, and now I think it's something like if you go to therapy, it's so that you avoid ever having those two highs or those two lows, and you're kind of kept at that good medium.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and I think if that can just start spreading to more like, some of the more hyper masculine culture, like criminal stuff and things like that, it'd be huge.
How do you what's your I guess process when you're meeting someone new, or in your experience with the federal, what was the exact system?
Well,
program?
The place that I worked had like a contract where they subcontracted with the feds, and so it was just federal probationees would come out, and we'd get assigned to them, and we'd see them do hour therapy, and
I had the same thing.
Was there a common thread that you saw between a lot of the people that you dealt with during that time period?
With the Fed guys?
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, yeah. The system was one of the common threads, like what they were going through. But they were all different insofar as like you can kind of get a sense of where somebody could go and it's the limitations that they might have. But like I said, one of the things that was the most common thread for me was like the difference between white collar and guys that were doing street stuff. There was just an honesty and a no bullshit with them that I felt like more comfortable and I could, kind of work with better than having to deal with that. And this happens in therapy without criminal stuff, just regular people where they might have like some personality, what are called personality disorders. Like, it's like, borderline personality, narcissistic personality, where there's manipulation going on. And there's a whole series of dynamics that are in the therapeutic process that you have to work through, that can be really challenging and taxing. That's, in the regular population, plenty. But when it was more direct and it was like, hey, these are my problems. And I was like, okay, I'm here to listen and I'm here to help if I can. I don't know if I can, but I'm here to help if I can. It was like, that was, it's almost easier work when someone's more direct, even if they're, dangerous or something like that. But the most common thread was just running up against walls for everybody, even the white collar guys, because they still carry that felony stigma too. And they don't even have like the street persona to fall back on. So their self-esteem is, really fucked up in that sense, because it's like they're being shunned on a whole different level. Whereas once they were accepted, which I think is pretty significant, you know?
What do you think ideally a society that would be more forgiving to past criminals would look like? What do you feel like?
That's a really good question.
What are those, everyone talks reform, and, it's been 30, 50, for all of America's history, we've always talked about this word reform, and it seems like we're really not there. What is that?
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a guy who's a patient. And I don't mean, again, to cut you off, but I'm talking on a patient's side where he is very important to get across to the kids that are out there, or young guys that are out there, or women that are out there that need to seek to get help. The biggest thing is opportunity. We need opportunity. But the second and the first thing to get there is, like a baseball coach or a coach in any field, there has to be something that motivates that person to play better, to bring the better person out in you. I had Mickey, right, who I really hit it off with her, and I felt comfortable, and she brought out good qualities in me, not my bad ones. It's similar to how I feel when I met you. There's a quality about you, like if I had to work with somebody, I could work with you for sure. Then there's other guys or women, doctors, and people are in this field that there is no commonality, and it's not that comfort level. You have to find the right person to help you along, where you feel that match, where you're going to work with them. And I think it's a big thing is a lot of these kids maybe are getting the wrong help from the wrong person. It's not the right match, and they quit. So you need to get the right person, like himself. And then you have to have what I say to anybody that's listening, that's running these institutes around the world, and each county, city, town, neighborhood, opportunity. Please give the kids opportunity.
What kind of opportunity? What would an opportunity look like?
Stop judging them. Let them come in. And don't judge what they did in the past. Don't judge by the way they dress. Don't judge the way they talk. Give them the confidence to know that, like he said, that you're accepted from somebody, that you can open up to somebody, that we trust you and you can work. You're a better person. You're not only a person that can sell drugs or hurt somebody, but you're a human being that if somebody gets to know you, they know you got a good heart, you're a good person, and you're able to learn and pick things up. Because really, for the most part, I think most kids, in general, because you heard me talk about this before, we put 30 kids in a room that are 4 and 5 and 6 years old. Every color, every religion, there is no hate. They're being taught to hate. Because if you get them, so you can go back to that get that 5-year-old kid back out of those kids, and you can work with them. But that's his job to get it back out of them.
What you said is right. It has to be somebody that you could deal with. I had one on my second bid. A good guy like you, and I sat with him once a week. It was mandatory for parole, and I got along with him good, and it was working. Because like someone like you, if I sat with, I know it would work. He's right about that. You deal with a guy that's a prick and just thinks he knows it all, and you don't want to sit with that guy.
Yeah, that's true, and it can. The thing that sucks about that is it can ruin it quick, and then it can ruin it for somebody for life.
Right.
Like if they have a bad experience. Or another thing that can happen is if they do find somebody that they like, and then for some reason they can't see them anymore because of the system. They
funding. It's always funding.
Yeah, insurance, X amount of sessions, stuff like that. It's unfortunate.
Going back to the question earlier, I just want to give you the chance to answer. on what, you know, reform you think would truly look like?
Yeah, I'm no expert on that. I don't. I'm sure there's a lot of good answers that I don't have, but I have ideas that I just, you know, contemplate. And I think it starts with destigmatization in any way we can, like just talking about it as much as possible. Like, you know, Gene was mentioning, maybe lowering some of those, you know, like, or raising the bar for what it takes to be a felon, and then what it means for you when you get out as a felon in society, those restrictions that are placed upon you. So like legislation would be huge, you know, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there that I don't know about that people are trying to pass. But you know, there's things too, like and I wish I knew the name of this place or more about it, but I remember reading about it once. There's a restaurant in Cleveland that is run by and has all staffed by, and it's a popular, like, I'd never been there, it's on the other side of town, but by all felons. And it was very successful, and it's like, that's the whole part of, you know, that's the theme of the restaurant, and it's really good, people like it.
Right.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is.
I
Yeah.
think that's a great concept.
Creative things like that, I think, too. If we can't change legislation, if we can't change a society, then people just doing different things like that, I think, would be huge. But more, and you know, the one thing I can speak on a little bit is just more empathy in society. Like, don't be so fucking scared of everybody. You know, like John was saying, like, just give someone a chance, you know? And just trying to imagine what it's like to go through what people have gone through. Like, what's it like experiencing what you've experienced, and asking those questions and being curious about somebody, and what their life is like. And that curiosity, empathy and curiosity go a long way. You know, it feels really good when somebody is interested in you and cares about your experience. It doesn't have to be like super deep, just like 5 minutes on the street, you know, like somebody just saying, you know, if somebody's struggling and you talk to them and you empathize with them and you ask them about their experience. But you have to not be afraid before you can do that, because if we're all walking around defensive and afraid that somebody's gonna, you know, hurt me or you know, mug me or something like that, then it just keeps building and building off of, you know, and turns into this big shell.
Yeah, I think it all stems from fear.
Yeah, it does.
You know, and I don't know, to the people out there, in your eyes, just because this is more of your field, how do we get people to stop being so fearful of you know, people that have these pasts? Because I think also it's like, unless they're really, you know, whacked out and can't control themselves, like, if you have a conversation with a past criminal, like, they're not gonna attack you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, unless you start triggering them and start, you know.
Well, yeah, I don't want to cut you off again, but in Pennsylvania, I was a mentor to a kid, Tony, that I met through some people that fostered him, and I tried to help him, and I got involved with talking to some community leaders in Montgomery Township, PA. And they do a program, what they call a reverse program. In other words, you take the kids you're talking about that are afraid and you switch them up. They're the ones that are going to be running the program. And you take the counselors and law enforcement, they're the ones that are going to be the street guys that committed the crime they did in the past. And you do these workshops a couple of days a month. And you see the difference of how they're going to treat and how they like it as law enforcement to be treated like that. And then you have the criminals or ex-criminals like myself that have to control them under these circumstances. We make him a robber, we make him a killer, we make him somebody assaulted, and we deal with it in the workshop. I thought it was a pretty good program because it gives guys like us the idea of like what they got to do also. So how do we penalize them for that crime? So it gives them an idea and say, wait a second, you know, this ain't as easy for these law enforcement either, or for the politicians that are running these communities. And I thought it was a good program, actually. And I think there should be more programs like that.
Yeah, stuff like that, it would be huge, like bigger, national,
Yeah.
you know, like, yeah.
It's all about funding, though.
Yeah.
A lot of times, that's what it is.
Yeah, and we need the will from society. People have to like know about it. They have to believe in it, you know. And it's like, that's hard to do. And again, that's why, you know, what you guys are doing, it's promoting that. That's a big start. More of that, you know, where people are just paying attention to that shit.
I'm curious, did you like watch John, or like how did you kind of come about the show?
We met in Brazil. No, I'm just kidding.
In prison.
We met in Brazil.
He was a god there.
I've always been fascinated with this life and stuff like that. And I'm trying to remember exactly how I stumbled upon it, but I think I was just like
YouTube searching, right?
YouTube. Yeah, like I was watching something.
See what popping up?
I was watching a documentary on something related to the mob, and then this came up, and I just watched it, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. Like, this is, like I just really liked it, and I wanted more of it. I was interested.
Right.
And then I'm like, hey, maybe I could go on with these guys. And so
He just kept calling me and hanging up.
yeah.
Is there something? Why do you think that so many people? I mean, I have my ideas because again, I don't have that past, but I'm one of those people who, like yourself, who is so fascinated by it. Right? I think that there's a difference between endorsing violent culture and being fascinated by it, which I think is a big distinction that people need to think about, especially when you're watching a show like ours. But what do you think it is about general society that's so, fascinated by
I've thought about this.
Mafia?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I think it's like, it's almost like, in one sense, it's like superhero stuff, right? Like the fantasy, of like having power and being like, I think we all feel helpless. I think that's part of the human.
What do you think about nicknames? Are they funny to you?
Nicknames are fucking hilarious. I think it's part of the human condition to feel helpless. Like we all feel helpless, and when you look at least the way organized crime is presented in films and stuff like that, it's like somebody is going around the constraints of society and getting together, and they're empowering themselves in a cool way, especially for a man. It's like there's also like that kind of masculine kind of thing to it, but it's like it's like a fantasy where like nobody's gonna hurt me. If anybody fucks with me, I'll hurt them. I can get what I want. I think everybody fantasizes about that to some degree. Of course, there's a whole other side to it that you don't see, and that's what you guys present is like there's serious consequences to that, but it's intoxicating to think about, and so I think how could you not be,
Well, it's what I talk about all the time. It's adrenaline rushes.
Yeah.
So the outside person that's watching us, it's a big adrenaline rush. It's like walking on a tightrope. You'd love to be that guy that's up there going, wow, he's actually risking his life. If he falls, it's over. It's really an adrenaline rush. But now here again, a guy like me might risk my life in so many ways, but I'll never fucking go up there. So it just depends on where your fantasy is of your life. Man, I could watch that all day. I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. I want to talk to this guy. Or that guy that climbs, a mountain.
That's right.
I mean, it's incredible to me,
I'm not
right?
doing it.
And then there's other people that want to be, an athlete or an actor, and it's just incredible. So
That's a
I
great
think the
point.
unknown is a lot of, the fantasy for people
Yeah.
that don't see or understand it, and you want to be immersed in it. But once you're immersed in it personally, you're like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I think the other thing is like, and this, you guys have dispelled this myth through what I've seen in your shows, is like having like a fucking group of people. Sorry for swearing. That like
Okay, I fucking curse all the fucking time. How's that?
but like that have your back, like a family. I like just that camaraderie and that closeness, and then you endeavor to
The
thwart this.
truth of it is, like I always say, join the Army, or the Marines or the Corps, because they'll have your back
Right.
in the street life.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. And, we dispel that and we show how that, I mean, I think everybody in public realizes that now.
The point you made was perfect, though. You said it's like you said. You're looking at the tightrope guy. You're fascinated by it, but you'll never go up there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's true.
Now,
Yeah.
you also side question for you. So you did. Do you still do therapy work consistently?
Yeah, I have a private practice where I see people, but
Yeah,
I
you could call them. You need help.
I already have. I don't need two.
I don't see the Fed stuff anymore. That was just like a year or two.
And then you taught philosophy as well at the college.
Kent State and Cleveland State University.
That's what I want to hear about. The history behind that. What's your take on that? And the effect of, obviously, the students and years later. And,
Oh, what happened at Kent State?
yes.
Yeah, the shootings. Again, that was before I was born, but it's big there. They commemorate that it's May 4th, where it was like, that was crazy.
That was
to think about.
insane.
Peaceful protesters, kids, protesting the Vietnam War, and the governor of Ohio gave the order or something. I don't know if something got crossed up or it was an order.
They shot a lot of people.
But they started shooting on kids,
They're
unarmed.
allowed to do that.
Back then, they did it. Not allowed to, they did it.
Yeah, they killed,
I'm
four
surprised.
kids.
That's like
Yeah.
other countries do that. We don't usually do that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty wild. And it wasn't like wasn't a riot. It wasn't like the kids weren't acting violently.
Wow.
It was just like something happened with the National Guard. And of course, the sad part of that is those are kids that are shooting the other kids, based on, and you talk about the parallel with like, the mob. It's like, it's an order. You got to do it. But you're being told to do something that is really not cool. It's fucked up,
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The people that lived through it on both sides, I'm curious of the psychological effect after that.
Well, yeah. I don't know about that, but I bet
It
the
haunts them.
PTSD's got to,
Oh, incredible.
Yeah.
With both sides.
Definitely.
yeah.
Because just what you said, the shooters, they don't want to take that order either. People think maybe one guy's gun ho, but for the most part, they don't want to do that.
No.
And
no.
and they got to live with that afterwards.
Yeah. I'm sure there's something out there. I haven't investigated that, but like the guys who actually pulled the triggers and what
Killing
that was
kids?
like. Yeah, like girls and it was
Yeah, it's
horrible.
horrible. Yeah.
it's brutal.
Yeah.
And so you taught, or you're still teaching?
I stopped teaching like a year or two ago when I opened up a practice and started hiring people, and so I was like managing a practice. I couldn't teach anymore doing that.
Gotcha. And did you enjoy teach? So you taught philosophy, just philosophy?
Yeah, like different in ethics, logic, bioethics, philosophy, stuff like that.
Interesting. And what got you fascinated by that?
When I was young, well, I always thought I was dumb because I had ADHD. Like for real, like I thought like I couldn't go to college, so I went to college and. When I got a little older, and I realized that I could do college because you can do it like at 3 a.m, pacing around, how that is. So I was able to like actually be successful, and then I kept going a little bit, and I was going to go to law school, and then I took a philosophy class at the end of my undergraduate. I was a little older because I didn't figure out how to do school until I was in my early 20s, and I took the philosophy class. I was like, holy shit, like. Just asking these questions, about exploring the human condition, like instead of, because what the thing about philosophy is, it's not about answers, it's about formulating good questions. And there's a therapeutic benefit to that. It's just like asking questions about stuff and allowing it to be open, having like an open-ended perspective on life is really therapeutic, because then you don't get all bound up in terms of like, rigid thinking, like black or white, even with stuff like anger, like if this guy fucking does this, I'm going to snap. When you're open and just like, well, let me just ask a question to myself. Do I have to get upset? And philosophy teaches you to do that, not just about yourself, but about the whole world. And it like broadens everything. So I got into it in that sense. And then I just kind of kept going with it. And then when I had a master's degree in philosophy, and I was living with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I was like just bartending, and she's like, "You need to get a job." Like I was going out.
That is a job, bartending. AOC did it.
Yeah. And so I called, and I just got real lucky at Kent State, and the guy's like, "Someone just quit. You want to come down for an interview?" And I got the job that day. And my girlfriend came home from work, and I was like sitting on her couch. I'm like, "Got a fucking job." But I just kind of fell into it like that, just randomly calling. But yeah, I mean, philosophy is great because you look at like how the human brain works and how the mind is, and how we understand the world and what's really real out there in the world in terms of like, there's something called epistemology, which is a study of knowledge, like what can we know? And then there's metaphysics, which is sort of what is real. And when you get into those things and how those things intersect, it's like, it just opens everything up and to all these interesting questions. And so there's a parallel with therapy in that.
Do you have children also?
I have an 8-year-old daughter. Yeah.
Oh, so she's young still.
Yeah.
How do therapists have therapists? I've always wondered this.
They should. Yeah. I think you need a therapist if you're a therapist. Maybe not, you don't always have to be going, but you need to check in, or you need to be talking to other therapists, because you just hold on to a lot of stuff that, people, if you care about what you're doing, you care about that people get better, and it's just.
I dated a therapist years ago, and I used to tell her, "Listen, you need a therapist," and she goes, "I don't need. You definitely need a therapist," because at the time she was dating me, I was nuts. So to date me, you definitely need a therapist, really. So she was like, "Are you serious?" I go, "Yeah, I'm very serious."
Therapists need therapists, and people who date
That's a
John
good verse.
need therapists.
Yeah. Well, back then, I'm normal now. Well, somewhat normal.
Do you feel also like, the last thing I wanted to ask you, that although we've made a lot of progress, I guess in a lot of sense of destigmatizing therapy, even though it's still a little bit stigmatized, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of perhaps overdiagnosing taking place now. That because you're sad one day, you have depression. You know, I think being sad, I mean, this is my personal opinion, being sad is a human emotion. And I think it's disrespectful almost to the people who do suffer from depression to maybe label a sad thought or feeling as I am depressed. So I think, and especially a lot of young kids my age too, you know, everyone has, it's, you know, anxiety, depression. I mean, the whole list of them. Do you feel like from a therapist standpoint, it's now been a little bit more common to they're quicker to diagnose different things as anxiety or depression?
That's another really good question. Yeah. And there's a lot of debate about, like, you know, we use like what's called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, to diagnose, and you look at a collection of symptoms.
Well, let me finish. You know, you as a person that has these disorders, you know when you really have it. So if the person's saying, oh, you're depressed, you're right, you know what you really have. You're bipolar, if you're not, if you're ADD, you know the real feelings. You go through it, and I went through it. Yeah. So if someone's saying, like you just said, if the person's this and the doc goes, oh, well, you have this, you really know inside what, you know, if you really have something wrong with you. I know there's something wrong with me.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
But a lot of people don't want to deal with it, though.
They just know they want to use it as an excuse. The people that really have it.
Well, it's painful to deal with your inner emotions and your psychological things. And people are afraid of it. And, you know. Let me ask you something else.
Sure.
Group therapy. I happen to like it. Sometimes better than one-on-one, because you're hearing perspectives of people that if they open up, you can understand, say, wow, I agree. You know, you can understand a lot of things they're going through when you're in group therapy. Do you like it?
I think it's really good, especially targeting a particular thing to where you can, like, listen to somebody where you don't feel like, okay, I'm not the only person.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. I couldn't get the words out.
I think that's huge, because it's like if you can hear somebody else go through what you went through, it's like that just has such a huge benefit to people. So I think group therapy can be really good. Sometimes, you know, if it's not facilitated right or something, or if it's not the right target, it's not so good. But when it's targeted right and it's the right people, and everybody in there is cool, and there's rules, like, you know, everybody's empathic, everybody's kind of doing what a therapist should do, is just listen. And it can be amazing, especially for something like PTSD.
Yeah, that's why I talk to a lot of these guys like Brian and that does the podcast. Like I said earlier, I Got You 6, and these guys can really relate because they've seen a lot of action. They've been in Afghanistan and different areas around Iraq and wherever they were deployed, and they understand when we have these conversations. It's like I'm talking to myself when I'm talking to them. So it's, to me, I like talking to people that can relate to what you've been through and going through.
Yeah, I think it's tremendous. Yeah.
Michael, I think, I don't know, do you guys have any more?
No, I could talk. We'd love to have you back
Honestly,
again.
I could sit with you for hours because it's all real, man.
I think people, when they listen to you speak, and hopefully they reach out to you, and if not you, other people like you. But this is interesting that for me, this is, I believe in therapy, and I believe in you, actually. So I think that this is amazing. If you would come on again, it would be great.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing. You guys are doing really important and good work.
I appreciate it.
So we'll leave. I don't know if there are people, if you want to directly plug some things, if people can contact you or emails or.
I kind of want to be left alone. No, I'm tired. No, you can. I have a private practice, the Old River Assoc, 2 C's at gmail.com. You can reach me that way.
We'll put the email in the description of the video, as well as. Do you have a website that people, if they want to read a little bit more about you? I think you sent me a link.
The website's oldriverassociates.com is the practice name. So we can. There's a guy named Brad who's got to work on that. He's behind working on it. So if you mind if I call him out on.
Well, anybody that wants to reach, you can reach us through the show, through my private johnalite.com, my website. You can always reach me to reach him.
Yeah, I'm just joking. Of course, please email me. I was kidding.
Or follow me on my Instagram, John Alite Officially, and through my emails and through my agent, David Nash, Fat Pigeon, fatpigeon.com, and wherever you guys.
You can reach me on my Instagram, GeneBoy666, or email me at officialgeneborrello@gmail.com.
And for myself, at felix.levine. And then make sure you guys follow the Johnny and Gene Show on Instagram, and obviously all of us. I don't know if
Patreon.
and the Patreon, of course. Make sure that you subscribe to the Patreon. Again, if you weren't listening in the beginning, that's where we made the transition over. It's a great app. It's the #1 app in the world to stream all bonus content for all the biggest shows. We have everything goes up there early. You have the ability to reach out to us directly and ask questions that we answer on our question and answers that are just for the Patreon. And there's a lot of other great stuff, so check that out. And then I don't know, are you on social media? You do the social media game? A lot of therapists don't, I noticed.
Yeah, I'm pretty low key on
Yeah.
all of. I just got a computer for the first time.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding. No, but no, I'm not really. I don't have a big because it's like you want to kind of protect
I
the people
understand.
that see you.
No,
you
I
know.
totally get that.
Tomorrow we have we're going to post on Patreon a very explicit, violent episode that we're not sure we're going to put on our regular list of YouTube yet. We'll get your opinions of the people that were on Patreon that sees it and watches it. Can you give us your opinion if you think it's okay to put on YouTube? We will place it on YouTube after you guys look at it and tell us what you think and give opinions on it. And we'll decide. It'll be very interesting, violent, explicit, about the past. Hopefully we can reach some people, and I'm not sure if we want to put it up on a regular. But let us know.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys.
Beautiful.
All right.